Good afternoon. My name is Lori Jakes, and I have the honor of serving as the Assistant Vice President for Alumni Relations at Northeastern. On behalf of my colleagues who are with me on this webinar today, welcome to our program. I'm excited to spend this hour with you and hear from our esteemed panelists. As we celebrate Black History Month, I'm so glad that we have been able to partner with the Institute on this program and hope you will find value in learning more about how the Northeastern Network is truly everywhere. Before the program begins, I want to take a minute to go over a couple of logistical details. We are recording this event and we'll upload it to the Northeastern Alumni YouTube page channel by the end of this week. Participation in this event means that you have consented to being recorded. The program will be a moderated panel discussion between alumni Dr. Winslow Sargeant and Lamar Letts. At the end, we'll have time for a Q&A session. So please enter your questions in the Q&A chat throughout the conversation. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And now I would like to introduce the Senior Vice President for University Advancement, Diane McGilvray.
Great. Thank you so much, Lori. And thank you everyone for being with us and those who will watch us after the live recording. I'm really so delighted and honored to be here with all of you today as we celebrate Black History Month. And I think this is a really important and appropriate time for us to be having dialogues about the importance of relationships. When I think about Northeastern, I think of it as an institution that really is about forming connections and about forming community. And in my role as Senior Vice President for Advancement, that's what is really most exciting and rewarding and fulfilling for me, that in our work that we do at Northeastern, we're able to not only help create, but also to help resource and fund that community and help grow future generations and make their futures extremely bright so that they can go on and support the generations that come after them. Today's program really features two people that embody this spirit and this aspiration, this ambition, this goal of intergenerational promise. But my job today is actually a really easy one because I get to introduce our moderator for the program, and that is Dr. Richard O'Brien. So Richard is one of my favorite colleagues. He's been at Northeastern since 2003, which Richard actually predates me, but just by a little, because since 2007, he has served as the director. That's when I came to Northeastern. So I've known him all my career at Northeastern in this capacity as the director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute, an institute that is named in honor of and continues the legacy of his father. At the center, Richard oversees programs and services focused on the educational, leadership development, and cultural interests of our African American students. And Richard, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Senior Vice President McGilvray, and you too are one of my favorite colleagues. And we have been through a lot. I tease Lori all the time saying we're long haulers, right? We've been here a while. So, but good afternoon, everyone. I am, as was mentioned, I am Dr. Richard O'Brien, Director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute. And I'm also a lecturer in the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs, as well as the College of Professional Studies here at Northeastern. I have this very distinct honor and privilege to moderate today's inspiring conversation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this 2022 Black History Month session, Develop Networks, Drive Results. Thank you again, Dr. Senior Vice President McGilvray and University Advancement for all of your support. And thank you to Alumni Relations for partnering with us on this very important event. This is a conversation about how the Northeastern Network matters. We convened this panel to highlight the power of the Northeastern Network, the importance of building relationships, and the value of finding meaningful mentorship. We will take a look at how it's not just one conversation, but how one discussion can lead to others, that can lead to others, that will lead to growth opportunities for all. Our featured panelists and Northeastern alumni are, as mentioned, Northeastern Board of Trustees member and Managing Director of S&T LLC, Dr. Winslow Sargeant, College of Engineering, class of 1986, and founder and CEO of Hilux, Lamar Letts, the Moore McKim School of Business, class of 2017. What makes their story so special is that their relationship began while Lamar was still an undergraduate student. We'll first give Dr. Sargeant and Lamar an opportunity to share a few words of introduction. Then I'll ask a few prepared questions to get us started, and then we'll choose some questions from the chat. And before we know it, the hour will have passed. We'll then give both of our distinguished panelists the opportunity to close out with recommendations and advice for current students, alumni, and up-and-coming professionals. I have the pleasure of personally knowing both of our panelists. I have known Dr. Sargeant since our days of high school basketball around Boston. And yes, he was better than me. And I met Lamar as a sophomore Husky and a student that frequented the Institute. As a sophomore, Lamar shared with me what he was building while he was a student. And I suggested that he have a conversation with Dr. Sargeant. I'm as excited as everyone else on today's webinar to have them both here today as they discuss how their partnership developed over time and resulted in a successful venture. Thank you both for joining us. So, Dr. Sargeant, why don't we go first with you with a brief introduction, and then Lamar, you can follow.
Well, thank you, Dr. O'Brien, or I knew you back then, back in high school as Rich. It's such an honor and a privilege to be on this webinar with you, especially as in light of Black History Month. But it's just the connections that we have and just the rich history of what the networks can be. As you know, I came out of Boston Public Schools and went to Northeastern University and got my degree from there. And it was through those networks I was able to go on to do a master's and a PhD in electrical engineering. And then from there, I started a number of companies, co-founded some that were very successful, spent some time at the National Science Foundation as a program director, was a venture capitalist for a few years before working on the first Obama campaign. And then I was nominated to be chief counsel for advocacy at the U.S. Small Business Administration after a brutal confirmation hearing with filibustering and a whole bunch of things. I was able to get in, but even back then when I was being filibustered, I reached through the Northeast Network to see if the network could reach out to a certain senator who was holding my nomination. And so once again, it's networking. And so after leaving government, I am now the chair of the International Council for Small Business, where I advise governments around the world on how to build an ecosystem. But throughout all that time, we have stayed in contact, Rich, and you put me in contact with Lamar. And so I know that you've always been an advocate for students. And so I'm just so pleased to be here and just have an opportunity to share and just to build my network as well. I mean, I learn and I grow by just tying into the Northeastern Network. And so this is an opportunity for me to expand my reach, but also to learn more from the network. So I'm just so pleased to be here.
Great, thanks so much. Lamar?
I'm Lamar Letts, the founder and CEO of Hilux, a drink that addresses the most common nutrient deficiencies in the population. My story with networking really started at Northeastern when I came here and ended up starting the first steps of this beverage. And a lot of people hear the story. I was a track athlete, and after an injury, I got the idea of Hilux, but really they don't see the behind the scenes. There was a lot of me reaching out to faculty, to professors, to talking with other students, and just really building up piece by piece what ultimately became the business. And it was really a special moment for me starting this business at Northeastern because of the amount of support that I saw within my immediate and extended network. And without it, I really would have not been able to move at the pace I was able to develop the business at.
That's wonderful. Great. So, Dr. Sargeant, let's talk about the early days of your relationship with Lamar and when you guys first met and how the conversation went and started the relationship, and what are some of the things that have kept you involved with this effort over time?
Well, thank you. Well, of course, as you outlined, it started with you, right? I mean, most networking begins, especially through an introduction, through the network itself. Mm. And because you knew Lamar, you reached out to me on WhatsApp or some type of forum. You said, "Hey, you have a moment? Do you have some time for me to talk to you? Because I have this young man here who has this company, who has this beverage, and he wants to build a company. And so would you be willing to talk with him?" And so I said, sure. Once again, it's network, and it deals with credibility. And that's why your network is so important, to share what you have. And so your credibility caused me to want to reach out to Lamar, because I didn't know who he was, but also knew that he had connection to Northeastern. So that was another plus as well. And so I talked with Lamar. I got a chance to find out who he was and his passion. And of course, after the conversation, I went online and I Googled him. And so once again, what you put up on the web could be, could hurt or could work for you. And so, and in his case, I saw that this was a young man who had a Kickstarter and was in Boston Globe, and he was in the trenches trying to make this happen. And so that was another plus for me to say, okay, that this is not just starting from scratch. This is something that's moving, and how do we take it to the next level? But I had to hear from Lamar himself in terms of what was the end goal? Where does he want to take this? And it's from that conversation, we said, okay, let's work together. And so I put him in contact with lawyers so that they could draw up the agreements so we can work together. And then from there was a lot of, there's a lot that we will discuss, how that journey as it continues to unfold.
Lamar, if you could give us a snapshot, you've already given us some of the history of how Hilux came into being, and when you started this journey, the other people that you mentioned to help support you. But as I can imagine, there were challenges and setbacks along the way, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I think Winslow touched on a great point. When he became, and before I met him, he was technically part of my extended network. But when he became aware of Hilux, he was able to Google it and see that work was being done, things were in motion. And that's an important point that I want to touch on, because the networking started way before the introduction to Winslow. So when I first had that idea, it wasn't something where I went to Dr. O'Brien and said, hey, I got this nice idea, just because if he were to extend it to his network at that moment, it would be way too early and pieces wouldn't fall into place. So I made sure that work was done at the appropriate timeline, at the appropriate pace. So when I had that first initial idea, my network was my mother, my father, my closest friends, my aunt, just to get their ideas, bounce things back and forth, talk about, hey, maybe, I know this guy who does websites. Winslow was able to Google and see our website. Well, if I hadn't done that, my aunt hadn't introduced me to that website guy, I wouldn't have my start with, some sort of online profile or things like that. So really those integral first steps is what I focused on. And I would say my advice is pacing yourself and understanding where you need to be to get the most value out of your extended networks, because people's immediate networks, you know who those people are. You often don't know the power of your extended network. So putting yourself in the position to take advantage and really maximize the value of your extended network is really important.
Now, But before I move on to the next question I have for Dr. Sargeant, Lamar, I remember there was an article in the Huffington Post or something like that, and you had started to get some attention for your product. Say a little bit about that and how you were able to handle that.
That was because that was kind of in the lead up to my Kickstarter, where we put it online and really it was like a pre-sale type of thing to validate the idea. We got people from all over the country to buy in, actually purchase the product. But to get that press, I was really tapping into my Northeastern connections, journalists reaching out. I had a giant list. 99.9% of them did not answer me back. However, I found that one success, that one checkbox really allowed us to really start knock over that first domino. And once people saw that there's the Kickstarter, they have been covered here, other journalists and other publications saw that, hey, this is a real thing that we can cover. So even that, the Huffington Post article, the initial press that we got was just tapping my network, really trying to even expand it. I was reaching out to people I had never met, and some of them took my calls, some of them, or a lot of them did not, but the ones that did really helped out.
Mm. Now, Dr. Sargeant, knowing you as long as I have, I know you've mentored and supported a lot of folks over the years. What are some of the qualities you look for in these potential success stories?
Well, there are a few things that stand out, right? One of the things that I focus on is looking at the markets. I want to make sure that it's a big market, that the product or the service is going after. I want to make sure that there's some type of advantage, or that there's a problem that is really being solved. And in Lamar's case, of course, there's a big market, and there are a lot of competitors. And I'm not afraid of competition. That just says that, once again, that it's a big market. But also with Lamar, I also saw that there was a passion, that there was someone who was creative, who saw a problem in terms of he talked about the problem due to the injury, so he could no longer run track. And so because of that, he was able to pivot and say, okay, well, how do I take what I know with what I know and to solve a problem that others may have? And so I also like that story as well. And so big market, his passion, solving a problem, and and also in this case, this was a consumable, right? So this is not something that you buy one time and then you're done. This is something that you may buy multiple times a day. And so that's also something that also made me want to take a look. And so after taking a look and after my assessment, I said, okay, I think that we can work together. Let's move to the next step. And so I put him in contact with some counsel who could drop an agreement, because once again, once you invest in these companies, you got to have the right type of foundation, the right type of investment, the right type of structure, so that you can build upon it. Because typically for startups, there's a series of rounds of funding that is required, and they build upon each other. So you must have a whole network, but also a solid type of foundation that will make it that one can build upon.
So, and as a follow-up question to that, so we don't have everybody calling you, as we look at the Northeastern Network and the potential that it provides, what would you recommend to other alums and how they can avail themselves to up-and-coming students and young professionals?
Well, that is a really good question, because what I found is that, especially those who have been in the workforce for a long time and they have expertise, they have a lot of knowledge to pass on. They have a lot of connection that they would like to pass on. So I mean, but it starts out with the individual, with the person, especially if you're at the undergrad level or recent graduate, or else you've been out in the field for a while, you have an idea. You have an idea of where you want to go, because we only can go as far as you can tell the story and you want us to go. What I found many times when I meet with someone, you have a window when you're talking to that person to share your ideas, to share where you want to go. And you may get that once or multiple times, but make sure to share your ideas. It's okay to say this is what you want, because then you will get feedback. But you have to be clear and say, well, I'm thinking about doing this. I want to go here. What do you think? How can I get from here to there? And what will it take? And the network might be able to say, well, I don't know how to get there, but I know someone that might be able to help you. Or these are some of the things that you should read, or these are some of the places that you should go. But it's through that conversation, through those collisions, we say in science, that's where the innovation, that's where the creativity will happen. So use your collisions when you meet up with someone that you have ties into. Make use of those collisions.
I like that, the collisions. Lamar, you are now on the other side of the formula or equation, as they say. What would you recommend to current students about taking advantage of the Northeastern Network? And do you see yourself in the role as a mentor in supporting up and coming students as well?
So yeah, initial advice, and I would say to do what I did, and I know it's a little bit different now. A lot of things are virtual, but they're still happening. When I was a student at Northeastern, I focused on events that were held by the different organizations, the different institutions on campus. What are they doing? What does this look like? Who's organizing it? And how can I be involved in it? So just having a list, obviously working around your coursework, but just showing up. Showing up is so important. Just allowing people to put a name to a face is really the first step. And then even looking a little bit beyond that, I know that I was pretty focused on food, and Boston is a major city. So there are actually food groups and food meetups, food conferences, a lot of them free, a lot of them, they are happy to have a student attend them. So just looking at things like that, where you can, within the Northeastern ecosystem, and then within the Boston ecosystem at large, build your own network and expand and get people to know about you and your passion. I think an important piece, touching back on the collisions, is that allowing people to know where you're looking to go, what you're looking to do, what is your idea? Is it to be in this industry and get to this position? Is it to develop a skill set in this area? Let people kind of get an idea of where your mind is at, what direction you're heading towards, because oftentimes that's how the most fruitful discussions start. It's just them knowing where you're headed and giving them their candid thoughts on it. And then the second piece, yes, I do see myself as a mentor. I have had students reach out to me through either LinkedIn, email, and I've hopped on calls. And a lot of times it's things about starting business, directions they could go to. Sometimes they have 10 different ideas and they're having trouble narrowing it down to one. So just bouncing back, hey, if I were to go forward with this, which one of these 10 ideas do you think makes the most sense? So little things like that, a lot of times it never hurts to ask, and it never hurts to just make that first step, because those are often the beginning steps to actually bringing your idea to life.
And a follow-up question before I move on to the next one, and I may snatch one out of the chat. And if I remember too, when you and I had talked about your idea, there were some other students, I think, were involved with it as well, right? How important was it to, bring together a team of other students and trying to work through your ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. It was extremely important. There were other students, like I said, I was at events, I was talking about what I was trying to do, and students reached out saying, hey, I'm this major and I want to get some experience here, and I'd like to do sort of like a project here to just see what this industry looks like, especially even a lot of people are interested in the food business. And this was a way for them to get a peek inside of it. So I found that to be extremely helpful on all sides of the arrangement. And that was also networking. Those students also introduced me to other students, other organizations. I was in the business school, so I wasn't connected to the design school or journalism or anything like that. So it expanded my horizons and was deeply important.
Now, a quick question from the chat for you, Lamar. This is the Moore School, the Moore McKim School of Business. Someone had asked if you had worked with the Center for Entrepreneurship, especially around venture mentoring and networks at the Moore McKim.
Yes, I did. And I actually did take a similar approach with my idea. So the Center for Entrepreneurship, they are open to all. If you have an idea, you can walk in and talk to them. But I wanted to go a step further. I wanted to vet my idea, work through it, make a business plan. I do have family that has business experience. So just being able to, and I was able to leverage that to talk to them about, hey, what type of business plan, what should I be thinking about this? And when I did go to the Center of Entrepreneurship, I had a lot that showed them that I was very serious about this, and I wanted to really move through the program and get the maximum benefit that I could. So that was an approach I took, but at the same time, I was able to leverage my immediate connections to just even learn about how to put together a business plan and what type of things you need to think about.
Okay, now this question I want for both of you, but I'll ask Winslow first, and this is to sort of bring it into today's context. Obviously, the pandemic has affected us all in a whole host of ways, but I'd like to get a sense from both of you. How do you think the pandemic has affected the business world, your ability to network, and how has remote life changed how you've operated and connected with people over the last couple of years? I'll let Winslow go first. Go ahead.
Well, of course, the pandemic has changed so many things. So now we're more comfortable being in a virtual world. And so I guess that the downside would be, of course, meeting in person, having those collisions, meeting by chance, because many times the collisions just by chance. You're going into a building, you're getting on an elevator, you're doing something just in random, then you meet someone and then you start a conversation. You're not going to have those in a virtual world because you don't have those type of collisions. But in the virtual world, there are people who you can connect to who might be not local anymore, but also who may feel more comfortable spending time via some type of Zoom platform. And so now, and also now because of the pandemic, now more of these webinars and more of these pitches are being broadcast. And so I would really, for those who are trying to learn how this startup, how this ecosystem investment work, I would try to tap into some of these webinars or some of these, some of these platforms that are advertising how these pitches, because you learn by watching. I don't, this whole thing of nature versus nurture, whether or not you're born an entrepreneur or not. I always say that we don't know, but you can get better. Good practice makes better. So if you get access to it, you can get better at it. Whether or not you can be a star, that's another story, but you can become better at it by getting access to some of the resources. And in post-pandemic or in post-COVID, or at least we hope to get past in post-COVID, we're now more comfortable to connect with others via this virtual medium.
Lamar?
Yeah, so it's definitely changed my approach. I was mentioning before that as a student, I would love to go to the different events on campus and even in the Boston area at large. And oftentimes that was just contingent on me Googling entrepreneurship Boston, and just seeing what happens, and I show up. Obviously, that's not the case now, but at the same time, those organizations, a lot of them are still doing events, and that expands across the country. There's a bunch of organizations doing events virtually now that you really just have to go to a simple online form, and you could be in a Zoom call. I recently did one for a different industry, and very easy. It was in California, so it's a little bit easier for my schedule since they're 3 hours behind. But there is the benefit there, and just getting used to that, I found just changing my thought process on what networking looks like. A benefit, I would say, is that Zoom call, you can make a greater impression than a phone call. My first conversation with Winslow was a phone call. I didn't have a presentation to go through or anything like that. Now with Zoom and the share screen function, you're really able to walk people through. Obviously, the same principles of a good presentation need to apply. It needs to be simple, something you could easily walk through, something easily understood. But if you have that down, and you have the voice technology behind it, you're able to make a longer lasting impression and have them more interested to even to share that presentation or that that pitch that you're giving them. So there are trade-offs that I have seen. One of the mistakes I feel that I've made networking, and I think it's important to share the mistakes. I don't want to say that, after a certain amount of years, you're just perfect at it, is that I feel that a call that should have been a Zoom call with a succinct presentation, I made it a phone call, and I don't feel that I made the points that I needed to make and feel that I got it across in the best way possible. So, just taking advantage of the, obviously there are downsides, but there are also upsides in how we are forced to communicate.
Another question from the chat, and this one for you, Winslow. Obviously, not everybody is a Lamar, so their motivation or their energy or their passion may not be as visible. How do we help and support those students or those who need mentorship but may not necessarily have as much clarity of focus as Lamar does?
That's a really good question, and I guess what I found, what is helpful is to be part of a team. Lamar, he started out by being a founder of Hilux, and he knew where he was going. But what I found also too is that being part of a team, that if you see a Lamar, I mean, he needs some around him, or there are other startup companies, there are other, there are other friends that they may know, part of their network, that are going places or that they're doing things. And so by being part of that team, by taking a role, whether in marketing or engineering, just being there, you will absorb so much. And that you'll find that as time goes on, that you will develop certain type of skill sets that will allow you to actually, next time around, now you can go out and pitch your idea, because what you find is that now you're part of a team, you're seeing how it's being put together, how the product and how the marketing and how they're raising funding, but now you are able to identify who they went to for funding and what was the forum, were they too early? And so I think that's a great point. We're not all stars right away, and we don't know how big the stardom can be, but we can be part of a team and understand how it's being built. And as time goes on, then you could be that person where you can go out and launch your own thing, or just continue to build on your brand. And so that's what I would advise: be part of the action. That's where things are happening.
And a similar question, Lamar, because I always tell students that you can never have enough mentors. What would you suggest to those students who look for mentors, but they're not always a Winslow that are willing to, take this ride with you or hang in there as you go through the challenges and all that kind of stuff? How do you identify those mentors, and what are some of the best practices you could suggest?
Yeah, I'd say to take it from the top, identifying people who, when you approach them with, with your vision, you want to work at this company, or you want to have this position or be in this career. Are they giving you actionable, sound advice that you can go back and actually work on? Because what I've seen is that a lot of people, they will give you advice, and it's almost, it's almost like a test. If you work on that advice, and a month later, a month and a half later, you come back and say, hey, I took this course, or I read this book, or XYZ, it instantly opens up the door for, for them, as this person's serious about getting to that next level, doing that next step. And, obviously you have to weigh the pros and cons. During the semester, you can't be reading 20 additional books alongside your coursework. But within reason, just seeing who is giving you feedback, who is giving you advice, who is even giving you criticism, because that often tells you, even if it's constructive criticism in general, somebody has to care for at least somewhat to respond with some sort of criticism, some sort of feedback. So you get a sense of who, where their head's at, and then you have to also show your commitment. I think it's important to know that it is a two-way street. You don't just knock on someone's door and say, hey, I'm here, I'm going to need this resource, to connect me with that person, XYZ. They have to know that you take advice, that you work on yourself, that you're serious about it. And oftentimes those, people often ask, how often should I reach out to my mentors or my my connections, my network? I usually think about it as, have I worked on, or have I acted on the advice they've given me? If I've done it in a day, I'll reach out to them tomorrow. If it takes me 2 months, I'll reach out to them in 2 months. So that's often how I look at it. I don't look at it as a necessarily a timeline thing. And I found the best reception from people when they give me advice, even if it's just an article. Oftentimes they'll say, listen to this podcast. I heard the founder of this water company was on it, and you might find that interesting. I'll listen to that podcast, and I'll say, thank you for introducing that to me. This is a couple bullet points of what I've learned. Maybe I want to discuss with them, something else, maybe an area that they can help me in, or something like that. But just showing that initiative is what I found to be the best.
Yeah, and there's somebody commented in the chat, I guess, it sounds like you're saying you got to be flexible, that it's important to be able to adjust, to have those building blocks along the way.
Absolutely.
Winslow, and this is a couple of questions I'm going to sort of combine together, but there's interest in, when you're mentoring somebody, when and if do you decide that, okay, it's time to hand this person off to somebody else that can help them better? Like, so for example, if your son or a daughter is an athlete, and you coach them as far as you can, but you want to hand them off to somebody who is obviously more adept in that area. How do you determine that? Is it a feel, and how frequently do you keep in touch? And, how much is too much and how much is not enough? Those kinds of things. I know that's a whole lot.
well, that's it is an art, to some extent, but that's a really good question. What I found from my personal experience is that, when I have work with mentees, and I can bring them to a certain place, and if there's a skill set that I don't know or I don't have, it is not a complete handoff. It's more that I'll use people within my network who may be adept in finance, or who may have a certain skill set that I don't have. And so now they become part of the team. And so in Lamar's case, since I'm not from the beverage background, since I'm not the foods background, I wanted to make sure that he had all the certification, the food, it was safe, all these things that before I got involved. But also what I did is that, since he was looking at bringing in stores or just getting some shelf space, I reached out to a colleague who was on the board of trustees at Northeastern, right? He had a connection. He was at one point the chair of Star Markets, right? So I wanted to get from him because he knew beverage, he knew the industry, and so the way it works with the networks is that when you tap into a mentor, well, that mentor's network becomes your network. He or she will expand their network to you, and then bring in others who may have a particular, vertical of expertise. And so that's what I still want to maintain a connection, typically as an investor, typically serving as the board, maybe even chair, but bringing in my network of folks who I think can, who also are now part of the team and can advance the product or the mission.
And Lamar, obviously not everybody is entrepreneurial and trying to start a business. And so one of the questions that someone asked about is, with some of your colleagues that you've come through along the way, how much do you stay connected with them? How much do you support them if they're not necessarily looking to start a business, but maybe helping them look for job opportunities? How do you continue to support them in their network?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. One of the ways is just kind of checking in where they're at periodically, just are they happy where they are? Obviously not asking it as blunt as that, but just making sure that, they are, they're kind of on their path, so to speak. They're progressing at the pace that they're happy with. I've had colleagues who they've been in, they've graduated, they got into the career that they were interested in, and they were looking at going to getting an MBA. They wanted to advance their career or even move across the country to work in a different sector, and they wanted to make that switch. So just talking with them, I've listened to a lot of different podcasts, read books, so just offering just different pieces of advice that I may have on just whether it's even people that I know who've lived in a different state, talking about their experience and saying, hey, you may experience these same things. You may want to move to this area or that area, and just supporting them in ways that make sense and ways that are genuine to my experience, my network's experience, and just things that I've learned. It doesn't necessarily have to be me calling them saying, hey, quit your job and start a company. It's being realistic on where they're at. Oftentimes I can give them insight on what an employer would want to know from them on just my thought process. If I'm bringing on a team member, what am I thinking about? What am I concerned about? And sometimes that change of perspective can help them with an interview. And I've seen that it's really, going through mock interviews or just standard questions, it's been really helpful for them.
Now, this is a question for both of you all. Obviously, you all are both very busy people, and time management is something that we all struggle with. But how do you all maximize your time in a very, very busy environment? And clearly, you probably have a lot of people wanting to have the conversation with you or your time and all that. How do you manage all that? Winslow, you can go first, and then I'll ask Lamar.
Well, that is a very good question, and it's something that we all have to work with. And I'll be brief, but in COVID-19, having a virtual, just living on a virtual platform, actually time management has become more of a problem, because nowadays, things are back to back, and so there's very little time to do anything else. At the same time, you can do more. It's just that now you have to just work to be effective, because sometimes we spend time where things may not be as effective. And so what I try to do, especially in new opportunities in business, I want to make sure that things are fully fleshed out, so I can read, so I can read the information, so I can understand it. And before I commit to any meetings or anything else. I'm trying to be well-read, so I'm not wasting the other person's time or wasting my time. But time management has become a problem because there's so many great things that you can do. There are so many problems that we have, which means there's so many problems that you can solve, right? And so for those who see the glass is half full in terms of, okay, yes, all these problems, well, okay, great. That means that if I come up with a solution, there's an opportunity that I can do good. And so now you just have to pick your poison in terms of what time you're going to spend on each thing, because you can't be all things to all people. But that is something that I also wrestle with as well. What am I going to spend with? And so I try to make sure that my calendar is up to date, so that I'm not, so I can do what I hope to do.
Lamar, how about you?
So it's rank ordering the importance of my activities. So, in a startup, there's a small amount of intensive activities that get you the most results. And really the other things are additional. Obviously, it's details do matter, additional pieces, but really narrowing in on what's going to drive the results, what's going to change the outlook of the company, what's going to move us forward, and putting that as the highest priority. It's often the things that it's intensive. It's you look at your schedule and you sigh a little bit of, oh yeah, I got to do that today. That's kind of how you know that that's where you should spend your time. So the other stuff that's a little bit more fun, a little bit more abstract, obviously it does need to get done, but having a rank order of the priority and knowing, once I have that order, where can I fit additional things in? Because the additional things are often fun as well. So just making sure that the core is focused on, and then the additional, you do allot some time for it, but the majority of your time is allotted where it needs to be.
And I would also add too, having a good assistant is, because they're going to manage your calendar. They will also say no, many times. By having someone who can manage your calendar and work with you, that's priceless.
Now, knowing both of you all, and we're getting ready to wrap up, you both seem to be in pretty good physical condition. How do you make time for yourself?
Oh, I'll go first. That's very, very important. I share the story that when I first co-founded a technology company, and we raised lots of money, a Series A, and it was so high stress that I forgot to take care of myself, and I came down with a bad case of bronchitis, and I didn't take care of myself, and that bronchitis turned into asthma, and I had a bad attack where they had to call the paramedics because I'd passed out. So I asked the paramedics, what would have happened if they didn't show up? They, would I have started to breathe again? And they said no. And that taught me is that when you're in this high stress environment, when you're building a company, take time to protect not only your mental health, but your physical health. Because after that incident, I didn't go anywhere for 4 years without an albuterol inhaler because I was so afraid that I would have another attack. Now I'm since past that, but that just goes to show that these stressful environments, everyone will tell you their success stories about how they raised money, they scaled the company and they sold it, but they don't tell you about all the times that it's lonely, it's pressure packed, then it's only you. And so, but make sure to take time to take care of your health. That's very important.
Lamar?
So the way I found to do it is trying to make it second nature. I definitely second Winslow's comments that it is easy to get caught up in the highs and the lows, the wins, the losses, and just lose track of what you're doing for yourself. So I've tried to incorporate ways to just make it part of my daily routine, something that is flexible. when it comes to movement, whether it's stretching, exercise, just making it scalable in the sense that if I have 5 minutes, I can do something in 5 minutes. If I have 30 minutes, I can do it in that 30 minutes, and just allowing myself that flexibility, because I've seen where rigid structures around, let's say, health, nutrition, exercise can often leave you discouraged. You may have a really tough week where you don't have that extra 30 minutes, that extra hour to focus on yourself. It throws you off. It throws you off your game, and it's a kind of like a mental setback. So I've tried to work my way around that by just being conscious of the fact that my time is going to be flexible. It's going to move around. And in light of that, I'm going to have my personal time, as well as my self-development time be flexible as well. It could be in the morning, it could be in the evening, afternoon. I'll fit it in where it makes sense. And just moving forward, I know that it's always going to be a part of my life. Just, I don't know what part of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great feedback. Great feedback. Okay, so now as we wrap up, I'll ask both of you to take a moment to give some recommendations and some practical advice for folks who are just starting out. Also for those alums that want to bring about some of those collisions, as Winslow had mentioned, and give us a sense of what's next for you all in your partnership. Winslow, you can go first.
Yeah, well, I would, I'm very optimistic about the future. To be an entrepreneur, you have to be optimistic, right? But also that means that you have to be looking forward, that you're looking at problems to solve. And the great thing about entrepreneurship and the great thing about our world is that this whole thing of continuous improvement. That means that no company, no product can sit still, right? The whole nature that we always talk about, a 2021 model or 2022 or a 2019, that says that there's going to be a 2022, a 2023, a 2024. That means that there's always going to be something new, that you have to add new features or new this or smaller, cheaper, something. That means that the entrepreneur that these companies can't sit still on what they're doing, that they need new ideas, and that also they're always wary about competition. So as someone who is an entrepreneur who wants to start out, don't worry about the competition. The competition is worried about you, because the competition knows that there's always going to be new entries into the marketplace. And so I would encourage those who have an idea, who wants to solve a problem, who wants to do something, do it, because there's always going to be something new. We always need something that's better and faster and cheaper and more features. And why not you? And so that's why reach into your network, mine your network, become an alumni of Northeastern, reach into LinkedIn, make sure that you're connected in, see who's where, and then, because that's where those collisions will take place, whether on LinkedIn, whether because you're an alumni, you're reaching into alumni, relations office to know who's where within your location. There are certain type of meetups in every part of the country. You need to go to those, especially in some of the areas that you want to, whether technology and healthcare. Be part of the conversation. Show up. Your Northeastern alumni card is your card that gets you into places that others may not be able to get into. So use that card. That's very, very important. And so that's what I would encourage.
Lamar?
So I'll start off with some practical advice, and then just some of what we're looking at this year or moving forward. So I would say practical advice is with networking to just be very conscious of who you're reaching out to and when you're reaching out to them. One of the pieces with LinkedIn and email is that it allows us that instant access to people who we might not be able to just hop on the phone with, but just being able to be critical of yourself on what can I say to this person at this moment to get their interest? And is this too early, or is this the correct time? Because oftentimes you can, it could be the right person, but just the wrong timing. And sometimes you need to work with your direct network to build up a little bit more, to just show that from an outside objective perspective, that you are working towards your goal. It could just be something as simple as finishing a course, or getting some outside certification, but just showing that you bought the book to study for that certification. You've enrolled in this course, or you plan to enroll in it next semester, or in this future semester, and just being able to speak to that, because oftentimes walking the walk comes with talking the talk as well, and being able to say, hey, I've taken these steps to orient my life in this direction, goes a long way to show that you are serious about what you're talking about. And then just with Hilux, what we're doing now, exciting stuff. We've been able to, actually, I'll even take it a step back. Some of the feedback that I have gotten personally from mentors is to work with the university more. We've been able to do a lot of great things. I was able to speak at this last year's graduation ceremony, and it was great to be able to, especially they finally able to graduate in person. But being able to leverage my connections at the university, as well as promote the university brand abroad. A lot of these news publications that are pushing out our story are saying front and center that Northeastern University is the institution that brought this out to the world. One thing that we're looking at now is working with different departments on ways that we can do studies, scientific studies on the product, so that we can showcase, different use cases, different benefits for it. And it really goes back to the basics of what is your direct network, and how can you leverage it, and how can you show that you're serious about what you're doing.
Wow. As I said, our hour go by fast, and we've reached that time. I want to thank you all both so very much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I wanted to ask Senior Vice President McGilvery, are you still there? Did you want to say a few words? No, she might have left her.
Oh, I'm here, Richard. I'm here.
Okay,
Just the typical getting off of video and mute. But no, I truly, Richard, to echo what you said, I'm so grateful to Lamar and to Winslow and to all of you in this community. This discussion was, I think, so valuable. You were so generous in sharing what you've learned. Your advice for all of us. So thank you so much for being part of this. And again, thank you to everyone who is listening in now and who will listen in and participate going forward. This is what makes our community special. Lori, final words?
Yep.
No, I think I would just echo what everyone else has said. This has been great. We're so excited that we were finally able to bring this event to fruition. So again, thank you, Winslow and Lamar. I have no doubt that we will be connecting in the future. So again, thank you, and thank you, everyone.
So thank you again, Diane. Thank you, Laurie. This has been wonderful. Thank you all for embracing what we were trying to do here. I just want to say a quick thank you to Matt Prince and Matt Lacerdo and the technology team, as well as everybody in Alumni Relations, because the collaboration and the support for this wonderful discussion was very much appreciated. I want to thank my associate director, as Winslow said, good assistants, Elizabeth Clark, our associate director, and the rest of our Institute team. Thank them so very much. It's been a wonderful Black History Month. Be sure to mark your calendars for August 5th through the 7th and use annual Black Alumni get together on Martha's Vineyard. As was mentioned, this recording will be available. We'll have it available on the John D. O'Brien African American Institute website. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Happy Black History Month. Happy Lunar New Year to our Asian colleagues and community. Happy upcoming Women's History Month. And I just want to say thank you again, everybody. And everyone, please have a wonderful rest of the afternoon and rest of the semester. Take care.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All
Bye.
right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.